I want you to just, for a second, picture the Serengeti. It's high noon, heat shimmering off the grass, and under an acacia tree there he is, the lion, the king of the jungle. Mm-hmm. We all know that image, right? The massive mane, the sort of regal, bored stare. It's Mufasa on Pride Rock. It's the ultimate symbol of, power, nobility.
It really is the definitive biological archetype.
Right.
It's probably the first symbol of a monarch that we learn as kids.
Yeah.
It's this idea of effortless command.
Exactly. Effortless. But here's the thing, and this is why we're doing this deep dive. The sources I have in front of me, some really granular behavioral ecology, new acoustic analysis, they basically suggest we need to completely tear down that image.
Right.
They're not just looking at the lion's biology. They're looking at the lion through the lens of, economics.
Which is such a fascinating shift, because when you stop seeing them as noble warriors and start seeing them as economic actors, the whole picture just changes.
It changes completely. The sources are asking a question that, honestly, it feels almost sacrilegious to ask. Is the lion actually a king, or is he a con artist?
It is a provocative way to frame it, but when you actually parse the data on how they get resources versus how much energy they spend, con artists might be scientifically pretty accurate. Or at least they're masters of the bluff.
That's what we're going to unpack. We're going to look at how they use sound to, lie about their numbers, how they fake their physical size, and how the pride itself might be built on what the researchers call the free rider problem.
Right.
But let's start with that economic lens. Why look at a lion like a hedge fund manager instead of just a predator?
Because in the wild, energy is the only currency that matters. Mm-hmm. Every single calorie spent is a cost. Every meal is a profit. If you go bankrupt, if you run out of energy, you die. Simple as that.
Okay.
And lions, the sources argue, are unique because their social structure allows for some really complex, let's call it insider trading.
Right, because other big cats, tigers, jaguars, they're all solitary. They're lone wolves, so to speak.
Exactly. If a tiger doesn't hunt, the tiger starves.
Right.
There's no safety net. But lions have the pride. And the old assumption was always that this was for hunting. This romantic idea of cooperative hunting.
Oh, I've seen the documentaries. The perfect pincer movement. One goes left, one goes right.
It's a tactical SWAT team, yeah.
It looks so coordinated.
It does in the highlight reels.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources for this deep dive show that's, it's mostly a myth, or at least a huge oversimplification. When researchers actually broke down the energy expenditure, hunt by hunt, they found it's rarely an equal team effort. They found the free rider.
The free rider. This sounds like every group project I ever had in college.
It's remarkably similar. In a lot of hunts, especially for something like a wildebeest where one or two lions can do the job, the data shows certain individuals will actively hang back.
Hang back how?
They'll position themselves to look like they're part of it. They'll take up a spot on the flank, but they don't actually engage. They don't burn the calories. They don't risk getting kicked in the jaw.
So they're just posturing.
They're minimizing risk and cost, but they show up right on time to the feast. They get the caloric payout without making the caloric investment.
But wait, why would the pride tolerate that? I thought nature was supposed to be ruthlessly efficient. Wouldn't they just kick out the slacker?
That is the million-dollar question. And the sources argue that the currency that free rider pays isn't always in hunting. It might be, helping defend territory later or just being one more body to watch the cubs. But it creates this constant tension. It's not a happy family. It's a high-stakes negotiation of how little can I do today without getting evicted.
It's a labor dispute.
Right.
Which brings us to the males. Because if we're talking about doing little work for a big payoff, the male lion seems to be the CEO of that strategy.
The trophy husband hypothesis. It's a very real thing in behavioral ecology. You have these massive 400-pound males, and their job is supposedly protection.
Right.
But the data indicates that for many of them, that protection is purely performative.
Performative.
Yeah.
Like a security guard asleep at his desk.
It's worse. It's like the security guard is a cardboard cutout. The sources describe how these males rely on just their visual presence looking big, sitting on a termite mounted to deter rivals rather than actually fighting. They're bluffing. They want to avoid the cost of a fight at all costs.
Because even if you win, you can get hurt.
You can get an infection and die. Exactly.
Totally.
So the king is basically just coasting on his reputation.
Until he can't.
And this is where the economics get really, really dark, the invader strategy. When new males challenge the residents and win, it's a hostile takeover.
Yeah.
And the first thing they do is commit infanticide.
They kill the cubs. I think people know this happens, but it's usually framed as just senseless cruelty.
It's not cruelty, it's math. The sources are really clear. You have to take human morality out of it. A female lion nursing cubs won't be ready to mate for almost 2 years.
And the new male doesn't have 2 years.
He doesn't. His own reign might only last 24 months before the next guys come along. He's on a very tight biological clock. By killing the cubs, he forces the females back into estrus almost immediately. It's a ruthless calculation to maximize his genetic return on investment.
He's not protecting the pride, he's protecting his genetic assets.
That's it, exactly.
That is chilling, but it makes perfect economic sense. Okay, let's talk about the asset itself, though, the mane. It is the feature. The sources call it a costly signal. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of the research. We used to think the mane was just armor. A thick scarf to protect the throat during fights.
A Kevlar scarf, that's what I always thought.
And it does offer some protection, sure. But if that was its only job, every male would have a huge black mane. But they don't. They vary all over the place. So evolutionary biologists apply the handicap principle.
The handicap principle.
It's a theory that says for a signal to be honest, for it to really prove you're superior, it has to be expensive to maintain. It has to be a burden.
So if it's easy to have, a weak lion could fake it. But if it's hard, only the strongest can afford it.
Precisely. And the cost of a big dark mane is thermal. It's heat. You're in sub-Saharan Africa. It's 100 degrees out. Now imagine wearing a thick black wool blanket around your neck and shoulders.
You would just cook. You'd overheat.
You'd suffer from hyperthermia. And the research shows that males with these big dark manes have significantly higher body temperatures. They're chronically hot, which leads to what the researchers call the hydration tax.
Hydration tax.
You have to drink way more water, way more often, just to stay cool. This exposes them to crocodiles at the waterhole. It separates them from the pride. It's a huge liability.
So when a lioness sees a male with a huge black mane, she's not just thinking nice hair. She's seeing a male who's essentially saying, I am so fit, my genes are so good that I can survive wearing this heat trap that would kill a lesser animal.
That's exactly it. It's the biological equivalent of running a marathon in a tuxedo. He's turned a massive liability into his greatest asset.
That's brilliant. Okay, so let's move to the other signature trait, the roar. The sources used a phrase that just jumped out at me. Acoustic warfare.
Yeah, this is where technology has really changed everything. We knew roars were loud, they travel for 5 miles, but we thought it was just a brute force signal. I'm here.
Right.
But new acoustic analysis shows it's an incredibly nuanced tool for espionage and propaganda.
Propaganda implies lying. How does a lion lie with a sound?
By manipulating the count. The sources describe these intermediate vocalizations. They're not full roars, but these low grunts and chuffs between the roars. When a coalition of males roars together, they can stagger these calls to make the group sound larger than it actually is.
Wait, so a group of 3 can make themselves sound like a group of 6?
That's the hypothesis.
Yeah.
It's acoustic inflation. And if a rival group hears 6 roars, they're not going to invade, they'll just turn around. So the defenders win the territory without ever fighting. They win by bluffing.
That's amazing. And it gets even deeper, right? The sources talked about eavesdropping.
Yes. They're not just broadcasting lies. They're hacking the communication networks of other species.
Hacking.
Think about African wild dogs or hyenas. When they make a kill, they get excited, they make a lot of noise. These high-pitched yips and giggles, they travel. The research shows lions actively monitor those frequencies. They basically triangulate the location of a kill someone else made.
And then they just walk over and take it?
They just walk over and take it because they're bigger.
Yeah.
It's called kleptoparasitism. Why go to all the trouble of hunting when you can just let the hyenas do the work and then confiscate the goods? It's not noble, but it's pure economics. Low expenditure, high return.
It's all starting to make sense, but this brings up something interesting. We've been talking about the lions on the territory, the residents. But the sources spend a lot of time on a group we usually ignore, the nomads.
Yes, and in the classic story, the nomad is the loser, right? He's the guy who got kicked out, he's homeless.
The exile, the tragic figure.
But the sources argue that from a species-wide perspective, the nomad might be the most important lion on the entire continent. Because modern Africa is fragmented. National parks are like islands.
Right, surrounded by human development.
And if those crides stay on their islands, they inbreed. The population collapses. The nomads are the genetic bridge. They're the ones who travel through those dangerous zones between the parks, carrying fresh genes from one population to another.
So the resident king on his throne is actually a genetic dead end if he just stays put.
In the long run, yes. The long-term health of the entire species rests on the shoulders of the wanderers who have no territory at all. It completely flips our idea of what success is.
The hero isn't the guy in the castle, it's the guy on the road.
Exactly. And this is driving the new research proposals mentioned in the text. We're sort of entering the era of the quantified lion.
I saw this, that they want to put accelerometers on them, like lion Fitbits.
That's basically it, yeah. But with a very specific purpose. We talked about the free rider problem. Right now, that's based on observation. But with a collar measuring heart rate and acceleration.
You'd get a spreadsheet. Lioness A burned 4,000 calories at 2 a.m.
And Lioness B's heart rate never went above resting. It would be the first definitive calorie budget for a pride. We could finally prove mathematically who's pulling their weight and who's coasting.
And what was that other future tech? Something about chemical dominance. That sounded like sci-fi.
It's the absolute frontier. The microbiome hypothesis. The idea is that a dominant lion hosts a specific community of skin bacteria that produce a unique chemical signature.
So their status is determined by their germs.
The theory is when they rut on a tree, they're leaving behind a bacterial business card. A rival could come along, smell it, and chemically understand the guy who lives here has a rock-solid immune system, I better not mess with him. The real negotiation for the throne could be happening at a molecular level we can't even see.
That's incredible. Before we finish up, let's touch on the last piece. Us. The human element. The sources use the term urban lion.
Right, and this is where the whole king archetype just completely falls apart. In areas near human settlements, the old strategy being big, loud, aggressive, that's a death sentence.
Roaring just attracts trouble.
It attracts guns, exactly. So they adapt. They become silent. Research shows they stop roaring. They become nocturnal ghosts. They specialize in stealing livestock quietly, scavenging trash. They trade their majesty for invisibility.
The king becomes a thief in the night just to survive.
It shows how incredibly intelligent they are. They're trading the crown for survival.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. We started with Mufasa, the noble king. After all this, the free riding, the acoustic lies, the main tax, where do we land? Is the lion a king or a con artist?
I think both labels are too simple, too human. King is too romantic, and con artist is too cynical. I prefer the term the sources kind of point to. The strategic investor.
Strategic investor.
Think about it. They manage a portfolio of assets. Energy, territory, genes. They hedge their bets. They bluff with the roaring. They pay high premiums for high returns with the mane. They diversify risk with the pride.
And like any good investor, they don't work any harder than they absolutely have to.
Precisely. The real majesty of the lion isn't brute force. It's that they are navigating this incredibly complex, hostile economy with a toolkit that includes deception, calculus, and cooperation.
That makes them so much more interesting. It's not just a big cat on a rock, it's a masterclass in strategy.
I agree. It strips away the Disney filter and shows you the incredible biological machine underneath.
I want to leave everyone listening with that thought you brought up about the nomads. We spend so much time trying to be the king, holding on to our little piece of territory. But if the survival of the whole species depends on the ones who let go and just walk into the unknown, maybe we need to rethink our own definitions of success.
It's a deep question. Is the real power in the castle or in the connection?
A question for another deep dive. Thank you for walking us through the jumble today.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. Next time you hear a lion roar, ask yourself, is he telling the truth? Until then, stay curious.